What's going on, everybody? This is Brad from the Ed Army, and today I thank you as we arrive to the fourth day of the 200th upload celebration. And today we're going to be talking about the decks that are going to be in our special booster 2.5. So it's going to be really amazing. But today we are going to be talking about what you'll need for the Digimon Tamers decks prior to 2.5. So I do hope this helps out. And as always, I do want to thank you guys for coming to the Ed Army, as one thing we ask you to do as a little help for us is to accelerate the sub counts. Let's keep growing, grow the channel out, and with your help we can definitely do that, so I do appreciate it. But we're jumping straight into the topic today because we're focusing on Digimon Tamer and its decks. So there are actually technically 5 strategies in total, because I do want to incorporate the important cards that will be in BT19 or from BT19 to support the cards from in 2.5. So we have a few cards that I wanted to pick today and show you guys what you might need if you're thinking about playing these decks, if you have not already picked them up. So starting off, we're going to be going with the big gun of the day, being Gallantmon, as it gets even more support in Special Booster 2.5 as the BT19 support arrives. But we're going to be talking about the support you may want to pick up prior. So starting off, we have a roster here, and these cards have been chosen by me as what I think are the bare minimums, because you can, depending on what your price tag is going to be and how you want to build the decks, you can choose depending on your price. So I want to make that clear ahead of time. I picked the cards that I think are mandatory, but at the same time are more affordable, because it will depend on your price tag. So these are cards that I think are absolutely mandatory to some degree, that you can mix and match with some of them, but most of them are going to be what I think is mandatory. So the cards I have mandatory for sure to start off with are both BT2s, or sorry, EX2s, Digimon, and the EX2 Guilmon. Now, both of these are important because they are your consistency searchers. You want to have them in rotation because they just help out by searching. So in the case of EX2 Guilmon, this one allows you to search for your archetype as well as Takato, so it's very important that you look for them with the use of this card. Additionally, Digimon is a draw when you attack with any of your archetype cards, so Guilmon, Growlmon, Gallantmon. You want to have this in rotation because it just allows you to draw cards, and being able to search is why I have both of these cards here as mandatory, because you just have that ability to look as well as being able to draw, so it's a really good match made. Additionally, for the other cards, I have the EX8 Guilmon X Antibody here. This one is important because this is a searcher as well. This is also your X line, so if you want to play cards like Cool Boy or X Digimon as well, like the Growlmon X's, as long with the more Growlmon X's, and eventually, Gallantmon X, you can use them, but I think this card's mandatory regardless of if you so choose to play them. I do think you might, but the point is, this card is just absolutely phenomenal. Digivolve on top of Guilmon for 0 allows you to gain more draws, but more importantly, you are able to search with it, so that's kind of the key, and its inheritable is very good for when you delete a Digimon, you gain a memory, so it's very good. Talking about other cards as well, we have EX3's Growlmon and War Growlmon. Now, the main reason that these two are still played in the deck, I think, and are mandatory, is that you're now able to really take advantage of milling as well in the deck a bit more, so you really want to have a way to at least trash some cards. So I think keeping the Growlmon from EX3 here is just a mandatory thing to do, because it combos really well if you so choose to play the EX8 Growlmon, so that one allows you to kind of work together because it's an X Antibody to draw and trash. But talking about War Growlmon, the importance of War Growlmon from EX3 still is the fact that you can play out Guilmon or Takato, so it's just a mandatory thing you want to play because it just helps you get the Tamers into rotation quicker, and in combination with Growlmon coming from BT19, that one will also allow you to play out more Takatos. So the main focus is you just want to be able to get your Tamers out quickly because they are important to the deck. Talking about the Tamers too, now this is where I said you could switch it up depending on what you want. I do have the BT12 Takato here, because one thing I like about BT12 Takato is the ability to warp Digivolve if you so choose. So I do want to keep it, and it is a memory setter, so it is up to you. You don't have to play it, but I think having a memory setting Takato of some sort is important. Additionally, when you pair that up with something like the BT17 Takato, the thing about this one is the fact that it warps at the end of the turn. So I did want to bring this one up because I do think it has an important ability to warp as well, but it is at the end of the turn, so it lets you do different types of plays. So like I said, there's many Takatos. I do think that when you're thinking about it, a memory setter is mandatory, but it will be up to you because we are getting another memory setter in BT19 or 2.5. So the point is, I have it here. Main focus is just to make sure that you don't forget to mix and match between them. But I do think one of the other or some combination of these two are mandatory to some degree if you so choose to build the deck. But the main thing is benefits. What are we getting here? Consistent search power obviously is the main focus. We want to make sure we have increased access to Tamers, which is why I still think War Growlmon remains from EX3. Additionally, you're able to warp because of the Tamers, so you always want to be able to do that because it can bring you back when your opponent has you on the edge, and it's just a good way to do it. But like I said, all these things are optional, but those are kind of the reason why I have those cards. Now we're moving into Henry and Terriermon, or the main thing is I really like the ability of this deck because I think it is one of the best beginning decks. So I do think if you're a newer player, this is maybe where you want to start. But the key factor of the cards here is that everything here is consistency, consistency, consistency. You want to be able to get into these cards quickly. And I do not have the armor Rapidmon cards here, but they are important, so you can look into them later. It's just more so that the support out of BT19 is geared more towards supporting the standard evolution line of Gargomon, Terriermon, and then eventually going up to Rapidmon and Mega Gargomon. But the point is, you do get to choose, but this is why I have them. Starting off, we have the Structure Deck Gummymon. Just being able to draw when stuff is suspended is always very good. We also have the BT2 Terriermon. This is important because, or BT3 Digimon, sorry. This one's very important because it is your memory blocker, so you do not want to pass up on this card at any case because it's just very solid. We also have the structure or the advanced deck Terriermon here. This one allows you to play costs, reduce Lotmon as well as Tamers, so very solid to do. Additionally, I did put Terrier X here because I think this card from BT16 is pretty solid to play if you want to use the actual evolution line because of its ability to reduce cost its evolution into things like Rapidmon that are armor as well as Gargomon. So having that ability is just very good, and you can net extra draws, so it is always useful to have it. From the starter or the structure deck as well, I do have the Rapidmon from that one because I really like its ability to hard play it. It de-digivolves, it can protect itself technically with its ability of immunity. I really think that's a good effect to have just because it's very solid, and a lot of decks don't actually have access to something like this. So having access to it in this deck I think is a mandatory because it just makes the deck stronger. We also have the Warping Henry from the structure deck as well. So the key factor here is this one just lets you warp into Mega Gargomon, but it also is a memory booster, giving you 1 extra memory, so it's very solid. Additionally, we pair this with Willis, who originally from BT7 was not necessarily a part of the deck until we received the Double Typhoon starter set, and then this card I think becomes absolutely fantastic with the support, so you do not want to pass up on Henry. Mega Gargomon Ace I think is a mandatory because it pairs up so well with just being able to catch people off guard by Blast Digivolving either your Rapidmons or Blast Digivolving, your various level 5s that you choose to play in the deck at some point. So it's just a very good card to have. It unsuspends, it's able to bounce cards. I think that's just a great way to have it, and it being dual color is also cool as well. But the point is, this card's very solid, and it's definitely something you want to play if you're deciding to go with this deck into Special Booster 2.5. It's just a very solid card. Finally, I have a mandatory card that you must play, and just because it's so good, and that's Double Typhoon. This one allows you to look for your green Digimon cards and your green Tamers, and it's just so good because what it does is if you're playing a deck that just runs the Terriermon and Lotmons as a lower end, by using its delay effect, you would go ahead and play a Terriermon or Lotmon from your hand without paying the cost. This card is absolutely fantastic. You want this card in rotation, and it's just solid for 3 costs. Absolutely amazing card, and it is such a good piece to have for the deck. Finally, more look at the benefits we're getting. We have fantastic rookies, absolutely monsters. Additionally, you're able to play cost reduced from your Tamer, and being able to warp is absolutely phenomenal because I think in this deck, it's a little bit more, let's say, less powered up in terms of its deletion effects. So having the warping ability just allows you to really pull people off guard, and then reducing your evos and play costs through things of the usage of Willis. You have your Double Typhoons, being able to accelerate and also do all these different things. I think it's just a very good ability of this deck to really catch people off guard. And like I said, as a beginning deck, I think this is a mandatory deck to try out because it's just very solid, so it's very good. Moving into the next one, I think the most highly speculated one, we have the meta breaking of Sakuyamon, or more or less you may want to call this Taomon Ace. Point aside is this is a meta breaking archetype due to its support. It's going to make its way into the meta a lot heavier than before. It won't be the most dominant thing, but it is going to be a solid strategy. So what we're going to need are some of these cards. Starting off, we have Viximon here. Now, if you see some lists from Japan, you do play a blue base, but I do think if you're going to choose to play a more pure build, this is something that you can't really pass up on because Viximon allows you to reduce the evo costs of some of your Renamon that you may play. So it's always good to just have that effect, and it's inheritable. It's still good. That when you use a 2-cost option or more, you're able to simply get a card draw. So very, very good. Additionally, the Renamon line here, for the Renamons we must play, it has to be between both the EX2 and the BT17 Renamon. The main reason why is both of them get the most amount of cards. So Renamon from specifically EX2 will allow you to grab any of the archetype, look at the top 4, as well as grabbing Rika or a plugin, or specifically, a plugin tamer, a plugin card. So those options are vast in the deck, so having access to that search is very good. And then when you play a 2-cost option or more, you get to gain a memory, so it does give you a little bit of a refund. But for the BT17 Renamon, this one is important because it allows you to do a search for the top 3, but you grab any of the archetype, and then you get to grab an option card that is, I think, yellow and is a 2-cost more. So it's just very solid to be able to get such a wide search, because that includes obviously, your trainings, your your memory boosts, your scrambles. It's just a lot going on. So very solid. When it comes to the other cards, I think the main cards we're going to be pulling from the Champion Ultimate line, first is going to be the BT17 Cubimon. This one's going to pair extremely well with the BT19 one. So this one allows you to just play a Rika if you don't have it already. So you want to be able to just get Rika on field as quickly as possible, whether you're playing a more pure build or going to be Taomon Loop. You really want to get Rika into rotation because it just helps out a lot better. So you can play this as one of your champions, and it's very good. Now, talking about the BT17 Taomon, this is your, in my opinion, budget version of Taomon Ace, because it has Taomon Ace's effect. It's just not as solid in terms of, you get to hard drop it. This one has to be a Digivolve. But the key factor is this card is basically Taomon Ace, but weaker. And you want to play this if you're playing pure, because if you do choose to play Taomon Ace, you have basically 4 more of it in just a weaker version. So it's very solid. So you basically don't want to miss on this card because it's very solid. But otherwise, yeah, you could just switch it out for some of your other options, but it's still solid nonetheless. And then finally, we're talking about the BT17 Rika. This one's here because it's a warping Rika, so I did want to choose this because you can play the memory setting Rika, but once we get the BT19 support, you are going to play numbers of that Rika instead. So I did want to have this one because I do think you play this at some number or copies if in pure, because it's just very solid and it gets the job done. But ultimately, what are we working with? Main thing is increasing your consistency. You want to search out your pieces no matter what in any of the Sakuyamon based strategies, so you want to make sure you get access to it. Additionally, you want to speed up in playing Rika, so we are making that a priority because you want to get Rika to the field as quickly as possible to help out with your plays. Additionally, you're warping so that you can get access to, your Sakuyamons as well as the Kazuhamon if you're playing that. Additionally, more importantly, you're going to be having your other Taomon Ace. I made that a mandatory thing because if you're going to choose to play without Taomon Ace, I don't know how expensive it'll be. I don't think it'll be too crazy expensive, but if you choose to not play it because of budgetary restrictions, BT17 Taomon is going to be your must play because it is just other Taomon Ace basically. So, you're going to want to do that. But moving into our next one, we have the black sheep of the group, that being Justimon, because Justimon's actually a deck where I'm going to recommend cards in a different facet because it's not like the other decks. So the main thing is, what are we going to focus on? Getting your Justimons. I think it's a mandatory that if you're going to play Justimon, you need to get some number of each of the original pieces of Justimon because they're going to be mandatory. So Blitzarm, Critical Arm, Excel Arm, you want some number of them because you get to mix and match. Like I said, the thing with this deck is ratios is the key. I don't really think this is a deck where you can just generically put it together and it kind of fits. It's just because Justimon works a lot differently than other decks. So you're going to want to get some number of each and then try the ratios out to see what fits your play style and your build. So that's kind of one of the key things. Also, I think Justimon X is probably the only mandatory of all to run at 4 because of how powerful the card is for the Digimon archetype. It just is such a good card to go into. It just does so much for the deck, damage wise, output wise. I just think this card is fabulous. So you really want to make sure that you get this card because you can just use it to really pressure your opponent. Now, talking about the other cards that are mandatory, because of how the deck builds, you have to build it in some way like this. So I think Cyberdramon from EX2 is still going to be a mandatory because you play your Rios for free and it doesn't restrict to how many Rios you play. So the point is you just want to get this because Rio is important to the deck. So you want to keep on playing Rio out multiple times over. And that's what this card can do. It's very solid. Having Digivolve is inheritable as long as you have 2 or more Black Tamers. Very good. But also talking about Cyberdramon Ace, because I really love this card. I think it's absolutely fantastic for what it is. Being able to blast Digivolve, reveal the top 5, play a Tamer. You get Digivolve on it as well as you have a Black Tamer already. So I think that's really cool that it gives you the ability, in this deck at least, if you hard slam a champion, blast Digivolve into this, you're going to gain pieces really quickly. And it is generic to playing Black Tamers. So if you want to play some Black Tamer in your deck that's not Rio, it is still spicy to just go ahead and drop it. And then it does have the inheritable of, when Digivolving, you Digivolve. So it's really good passing that on to your Justimons that maybe one of their problems might be like an Ace Digimon your opponent's holding, and you can just respond by Digivolving that Digimon down so that they can't blast Digivolve. Just something to keep in mind because it's cool. But we're going to talk about the benefits. So the most important thing is the increased variety. Like I said, you really need to decide on what you want to build it with because that's the key. The main thing too is options to use to structure your attack. Sometimes you want to go into like Critical Arm as your first, but then sometimes you just choose, I want to go Excel Arm and then go into something like Blitz Arm and then go back to Critical. Stuff like that can be done with the deck. So you really want to give options to really figure out how you want to like attack your opponent. Additionally, you want to accelerate your plays. So that was the key reason of having both Cyberdramons, because you really need to get Rio to the field and get your other Tamers out so that you can start pressuring your opponent with those abilities. So it is there and something you should think about. Now, we're obviously moving into the final one, which is the deck that I think has the second most potential to dominate. And the main reason is that this is a fan favorite deck. This has been pushed a lot, and that being Beelzemon here. I think this deck obviously has the ability to dominate in terms of I think people will just try it because they really like the deck. So it gives it a high chance of actually seeing play randomly at maybe tournaments and maybe pulling something off. I'm not trying to say this deck is going to be a meta dominant, but I do think that this deck actually has the tools to kind of break out and surprise people. So starting off, what do we got? We have a lot of the cards from the last structure set, so this will make it a bit easier for you who want to play Beelzemon. I think a lot of the cards here still hold a lot of weight, but there are a few you're going to have to pick up if you want to play it. So starting off, we have the Yamon from the starter set. The main reason I have it from the advanced deck here is that this inheritable is still good to simply trash 2 cards on the top of your deck when you attack. You must meet those requirements in terms of the actual traits of the Digimon attacking, but it is still a solid inheritable, and it's still a good effect to have because this deck is just focused around milling, and milling is always good. Also, when it comes to the Impmons, the one I think is going to be mandatory is still going to be the advanced set Impmon. I think what makes this card so mandatory is the ability to warp Digivolve if you have 20 or more, but also the effect that keeps it relevant is it's inheritable, where when you are attacking and you mill cards off the top of your deck, you get to delete one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon. This effect has just seemingly gotten better based on the fact that we have a lot of Floodgate rookies and you really want to just get rid of them in this deck. So by playing the actual strategy of the deck, you're going to be really blowing up just a lot of their stuff. So that's why I have it here. Additionally, Wizardmon retains itself here. The main reason I talk about Wizardmon, not Wizardmon X, is that Wizardmon is the way you gain memory in the deck to just simply mill it and you gain memory. So you really want to have access to this card because it just simply makes your turns a lot longer and it gives you more viability to try to get around your opponent because it's just a good card to mill. EX2's Beelzemon here returns because of how important it is. When you mill this card, it allows you to play Impmon from the trash. So very good. You really want to see this. Additionally, for its one attacking, you get to mill cards as well. So in this strategy, you really just want to make sure you're milling enough cards to get to your pieces quickly and also set up for your attacks because you want to load up your trash enough to really get your opponent off guard. This is the only mandatory Beelzemon because I think what this card has always done for the deck has just allowed it to give the deck more power and makes it a lot more fun. And as one of the people who have played this deck a bit, I really think that this is like probably the second most important card in the deck next to Imp because when it really boils down to it, you need this card to play back Imp you've milled, but additionally you want it in rotation because it's just a very good card to mill one, but when it's on the field and it attacks, it's very solid to get more cards in trash. So it deletes stuff too, so very good. Talking about the last two, we have Beelzemon X, and we also have Blast Mode from this set. Now, the main reason I want to talk about Beelzemon X really quickly is that this card is absolutely insane because of how much damage it does when the combo goes off. Usually what you're doing here is you're getting to hit your opponent's security. You're trashing the top of it because of the amount of cards in trash. So this card is ultimately here to allow you that ability to simply just finish the game, which is almost always why you play it in a low number, but you still play it in enough numbers to see it. The deck is somewhat tight on space, but I still think you want to get a copy or two of this because when you get the setup and you play like 1x antibody, you will see it. Trust me, a lot of times I've only played 1x antibody in my builds and I find it, and when I get it, this card goes online and it goes burr and it wins the game for me there. Now, Beelzemon from the advanced set is something I did want to talk about because this is a card where I think it does fall out of favor, but it does not fall out of the deck. So what I mean is there is the new Blast Mode coming out from 2.5, and I do think that it will heavily replace this card in that I think you'll drop this card down in terms of its usage a bit because I think the Blast Mode is just very solid because it is an Ace Digimon, so it gives you just a little bit more reach. Like say you have a Beelzemon on field, but you don't have the X antibody, and your opponent goes to attack you, you do have the ability to Blast Digivolve, get that on field, and disrupt them with that Blast Mode, so it is something that you want to do. But I think what gives this Blast Mode a little bit more credence is when it's trash, it gets rid of level 3 and lower Digimon. So effectively, this is another way to get rid of little pesky floodgates. So you can keep this in, I think, because it's solid. Additionally, its ability to unsuspend, and then if you have, I believe it's 20 or 30 or more cards, I think, in trash, you gain back 3 memory. So the reason this is important is that playing this as a one-of and retrieving it with something like Rivals Barrage or some way to retrieve it from the trash is just so solid because it removes something and it can just sit in your trash for the longest time until you need to pull it out. And it is a game ender card. This is something where if the X antibody can't get the job done by melting the security and you can't chip them down, this is something you specifically set up with a level 6. Unsuspend it, have all that memory gained back, and you just swing for game. It's really something that you want to keep. So getting a copy of it won't hurt. Just to hang on to it, because if you're going to play the deck, I promise you there will be times where this card comes up, so think about it like that. Then finally, closing off, there are 2 cards you want to consider that are options, that being Death Slinger and Rivals Barrage. Now, for Death Slinger, this is a lot easier for many of you because this card is not expensive. It was printed twice, so it was in the structure deck and it was in EX2, so this card is a lot more accessible. When you mill it, you gain a memory, but when you use its main effect, it deletes one of your opponent's level 4 lower Digimon. Then for every 10 cards, you boost that effect up that maximum. So this card in this deck easily can clear level 6s to 7s. Very easy for 4 costs, so never rule it out. And you want to mill it, so you usually play like 2 to 3 copies. But for Rivals Barrage, the problem with this card is that it is very expensive. Even with its reprint, I think in a event pack coming up, this card is still going to be expensive. If you don't know why, this card lets you add back purple cards from your trash. So it is just super good. Purple Chart, Digimon, and Tamers. So a lot of decks will play this card, and when you mill it, you place it into the battle area. So that's another reason why a lot of decks that mill this card just get it back immediately, and they do a lot. Additionally, for its main effect, it deletes one of your opponent's Digimon with the highest level. So this is also removal. So pretty much that's why Rivals Barrage is such a solid card. The main reason why I say this is kind of a mandatory card is you still want to play it in some numbers. I'm not saying you have to play it in 4. Most people play it in around like the 3-to-2 ratio. If you really just want to try to make it work, you could play this as a one-of if you really want to. I think 2 is probably the number that I think is safe for me to tell you to like go ahead and pick it up, because I think 2 of them are just very good. But you know, I'm understanding, I get it. So it is up to you of how many you want to play. You could play without it. I don't think it's impossible. It's just that ability to search a lot of times helps out for the deck. I mean, search, add back with its delay ability. So you really want to maybe play it, but you know, like I said, I'm not going to tell you no. So that is kind of the case. But finally, we have the benefits here. You're increasing your speed. Like I said, speed is the key with this deck. The quicker you get set up and online, the quicker you can beat your opponent. Additionally, your inheritables are absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of good effects in this inheritable list of your Digimon line, so it's very good. More importantly, the boss Digimon that make the opponents and break their deck. So the key thing is, a lot of times when you get into Beelzemon, it's not the end of the game, but it makes your deck just go quicker. Like whether you're playing the EX2 Beelzemon or some numbers of the advanced set Beelzemon, or even something like the EX6 Beelzemon, which is a card I did want to talk about, but I don't think it's as mandatory because it is. Second effect is more of a Demon Lord's effect, so it doesn't matter as much. But the key factor is they boss Digimon in this deck basically spell doom for your opponent. So like whenever they hit the field and they're ready to be attacking your opponent, it's usually not good for them. So that's kind of where I want to clear off the video here. And that's all the cards I have that you're going to need for the Digimon Tamers decks before Special Booster 2.5. I do hope this helped you guys out because this was a fun video to make for me, because there was a lot of like picking and choosing and thinking, I don't know if people are going to need it or not. Should they really pick this up or not? Also basing it off of some Japan lists I saw, I was like, well, they do play this, some don't play this, but I think TCG players like to kind of run the gauntlet a little bit when we're building. So I did want to mention some of these cards because I would say, oh, you don't need it. I'm like, that's technically not true. But, you know, it's more so that like, oh, I don't know if people will experiment with it. That's not true either. So I just want to give the widest berth, I think, of cards that are going to be for sure mandatory, but also you can experiment without them or with them if you so choose. So that was where I was going with this. But thank you so much. Have a great day, and as always, this has been Brad from the Ed Army signing off, and for all of you out there, to sign on.